Welcome back, and we're going to move right along to the next piece of our plan, and that is we have to do a faction configuration here. Now, whenever you're doing using the Legends Special Effects plugin to do something like this, remove hostility or force a fight to end, or if you want an NPC or a monster to be neutral to the players at the beginning of the fight where they don't do battle immediately, you need to have a special faction for that. You just need the one in your whole module. Each module just needs the one thing done to it, and you can use it over and over and over again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what that is. In the special effects plugin, when you import it into your module, you're going to get this. In the Legends Quest under creatures, you're going to see special effects. You're going to see this thing called the neutral badger, and it's a monster, and all it is just a little badger here, and his purpose in life is not to do anything other than manage the neutral faction that you're going to create for the special effects plugin in your module. You don't put him anywhere where a player can see him or fight him or communicate with him or whatever, and his scripts are all stripped off of him, so he doesn't actually interact with anything. What I would do is I would have a special factions area in my module where you plop these faction creatures down, because that's really the only way to reference them. It's a really crappy way to do it, but it's kind of the only way we got when we want to deal with factions. So for this particular encounter, though, I'm just going to throw it right here, and we're just going to ignore him. But the point is that whenever you're dealing with factions in Neverwinter Nights, you have to have a creature on the faction you need to deal with, to code with, and you reference him in your code whenever you want to adjust or change or manipulate other creatures' factions. And that's essentially what he does. So when you look at his properties, I'm just going to bring over his properties. Right now you'll see he'll have an unknown faction. And that's because my module does not have a faction assigned to him. So whenever I'm doing anything with factions in my Neverwinter Nights 2 module, you just got to have an area, a special secret hidden area that players can't get to. And you only need one area for your whole module where these faction creatures live. So, and again, in this example, I'm just going to throw him in here in the corner. So now that I've got him placed somewhere in my world, what I do next is I just create the faction for him. And all you do is just add a faction. I'm going to click it here and give it a name. And I'm just going to call it the neutral faction. Neutral. And that's it. I'm just going to call neutral and save it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply that faction to our badger. So when I look at my badger's properties, I'm going to change his faction to the neutral faction, and that's it. I only have to do that once to set up faction manipulation. The special effects plugin looks for this badger, this particular guy, when it needs to manipulate your monster's factions to make it, not to make the fight end and things like that. We just have to change his faction to something else, and this guy is just going to be our faction manager. So again, whenever you want to start using this on a larger scale, create a special area for this guy and throw him down in it and just forget about him. Don't ever think about him again once you've got that done. So that's it about factions. Now we're able to stop fights effectively. And what we'll do is we'll look at our plan, and we'll just bring that back over. We need to be able to do things to set up these flags next. So the first flag we want to set up is flag 1, and that's when the player enters the room. Okay, so how we're going to do that, and what that causes is our vampire to spawn. So what we're going to do, we're going to pull up our blueprints here. I'm just going to bring this over and show you. Under Legends Quest, under Special Effects, we have this thing called a flag trigger. We're going to place this down in the room. When a player enters this trigger, we're going to be able to set a flag, and that flag is to spawn the vampire. We don't want to spawn the vampire when the player stands down here, because when the vampire spawns, it could say her words and things. We don't want that, and we don't want really to make her look like she's just standing around there the whole time. We want it to appear that the vampire appears because the players are encroaching on her tomb or on her little area here. So what we'll do is we'll just actually create this trigger just in this little area here. So the players actually have to go inside this trigger to cause her to appear. And how we do that is we just lay it down that trigger, we select it, and we go into the special effects plugin. We say set flags on a trigger instance. Now, what flag do we want to turn on? We want to turn on flag 1, and that's it. Very simple. Finish. That flag is going to turn on now when the first player comes along and hits this trigger. The next thing we want to do in our plan, I'll just bring it over again, is to get flag 2 to go. And that is when the vampire is reduced to near death. So this is the first time the vampire is going to be reduced to near death. And that's going to be flag 2. Okay, in order to do that, what we do is we bring over our blueprints, we select our vampire, here she is here, we select her, and we fire up the special effects plugin again. I'm not going to place her, so I'll just hit escape. And we'll fire it up again with her selected in the blueprints, and we'll say set flag on creature blueprint on end of combat round near death. So when she's near death. Now remember, no matter what a player does to this vampire, they can lob the biggest, most powerful spell they can. The vampire will not die. The vampire will be reduced to 1 hit point, but she will not die. And the reason for that is because in her blueprint, the immortal flag is turned on. And that just makes it impossible to actually kill her. You can fight her and watch her health drop and whatnot, but you can't kill her. When she gets down to that 1 hit point, this trigger will occur. So what we'll do is we'll just click on that. And we said we wanted flag 2 to appear when she's near death. Now remember, this is the first time she's near death, because you can have that happen more than once. So when she gets near death the first time, flag 2 will turn on. So we're just going to select that and hit add. And that just adds this to the table here. And I'll explain why we're doing it this way in a minute. Finish. Quit. So now when the vampire hits near death the first time, flag 2 gets turned on. Okay? Then later on, she's going to heal up and rejoin the fight again. When she rejoins the fight again, the players knock her health down a second time, and she will arrive at near death a second time. And at that second time, we're going to have flag 3 come on. Now, how do you detect that she's actually near death the second time instead of the first time? Well, there's an easy way. If this is the second near death, flag 3 has to turn on, but we know it's the second near death because flag 2 should already be on. So when flag 2 is already on and she hits near death, we know that it's the second near death because it's already on. We're going to turn flag 3 on, and I'll show you how you do that in the plugin. Again, with her selected in the blueprints, we'll fire up the special effects plugin, and we'll set flag again on the end of combat round near death. We'll see that we're turning flag 2 on earlier with no prerequisites. This time what we're going to do is that when she's near death, we're going to set flag 3 on, but we're only going to do it if flag 2 is already on, and that's what these prereq on flags mean. Basically, we're not going to do anything, we're going to turn on any flags, and we're not going to turn off any flags unless these prerequisite flags are on. And that's how we are able to capture this as a second near-death event. If I needed to do this again, if she, somehow if we had more phases in this fight and she healed up again and we had to knock her down yet again, I would set like flag 4 on, but I would only do it if flag 3 was on. So that's how we are able to capture that. So I'll add that into our table and finish. And those flag triggers are now on. The last one, flag 4, is this effect here that we want a visual on her corpse when she dies. So basically this one again, fairly easy. When she dies, flag 4 comes on. So again, we will have her blueprint selected in our tool set. We'll fire up the special effects plugin, set flag on creature blueprint, but this time it'll be on the death event. Now there's no table here because you don't really technically only die once. We'll flag 4 and finish. That's it. All 4 flag triggers are now set. You don't have to do anything else there. All we have to do now, all that's left in this entire boss encounter is to set up all of these reactions for these 4 flags. Once we have that done, we're finished. The whole encounter is done. And this is where the real piece of work begins. So let's start with flag 1. Now, of course, before we can move on to any of this, we actually have to lay down the most important thing to make any of this happen. in our blueprints, under waypoints, Legends Quest, special effects, Mr. SE Man. This is our manager that manages our special effects. Okay, one thing I want to do with this manager of special effects, I'm just going to bring over his properties. Now, one nuance or one kind of a side effect of the Legend Special Effects plugin is that whenever you do a couple of different kinds of reactions, the chat box is telling you the name of what's causing damage is one of the big ones that I notice. So, for example, we're doing an AoE damage reaction in here, and because the special effects manager is the actual object that's causing the damage, when these things happen, I noticed early on when I created the plugin, is in the player's chat box in the game, it would actually use the name of the special effects manager to say this is the person that's causing your damage. So it would say Mr. SE Man damages player Joe for 10 points of damage, right? And that kind of like, what was that? So I looked at that, I'm like, what? That doesn't make sense. So what I did is, whenever Mr. SE Manager is going to be causing damage, I change his name. And I wrote intelligence into the scripting to actually use it. So in this example, or in this encounter, the AoE damage is being caused by this this darkness spell that's going on. So this darkness spell is not just darkness, but it's actually damage. That's what the builder wanted. So what we're going to say is, instead of having the default say Mr. SE Man damages the player, we're going to say the darkness damages the player. And how do we do that? Well, I'll show you the trick to that. In the blueprint, or in the instance when we have Mr. SE Manager selected here, all we got to do is change his name. We're going to change it to the darkness. And what I did is I coded this in such a way so that when the area of effect damage occurs in a player's chat box, it's going to actually pull up this field here, whatever I wrote in here. So it'll say the darkness causes player Joe 10 points of damage. So that's really all I wanted to show there. It's a bit of a hack, but it works pretty effectively. And again, it's one of those tricks that you have to be cognizant of, especially when you're looking at your chat box wondering, why am I seeing this SE Manager do damage to me? So now it says the darkness will do damage. And now we can move into our reactions. So let's fire it up and start dealing with flag 1. Alright, let's pull up our plan here again and look at flag 1. Flag 1 says we're going to spawn our vampire. She's going to laugh and do a one-liner in a fight. The laugh is going to be this. This is the one-liner that they wanted, and of course she's already going to be hostile, so the fight will begin automatically. So let's put in the reactions for that at flag 1. All right, flag 1. First reaction is going to be to activate a spawn point. Now and you know what? Actually, before I do that, I'm going to actually add some more ambience here. In this area, I actually don't have any battle music or anything, and I'm going to assume, and I put these in here because in a dungeon, I'll have a certain battle music assigned to the area, but when you come up onto the boss encounter, I don't really want to play the same combat music that the players have been hearing for, every single monster. So when I do the boss encounters, I usually change the combat music to something more epic. So that's what I do here. So the very first thing we're actually going to change here is we're going to change the battle music. And one battle music I like to use for low level bosses is this one here. It's actually X2 Fireplane, but in the tool set, this particular battle music here is Beholder Cave. It's a pain in the butt to figure out what these are for each one, but you can do it. And we'll force play that. So I'm just going to change the battle music. We're going to make the assumption that this dungeon was bigger than this, and players were fighting other monsters and stuff with the standard battle music for the area. But for this fight, we're going to change our combat music to something else. Then we're going to move into activating her spawn point. Now, if you recall, I'm not going to drag it over. I'm just going to grab it here. But I did record our vampire's spawn point. So I'm just going to plop it in there. That's our vampire spawn point because we want her to activate right away. So we'll add that in. And then, of course, anytime we want to activate and then actually have our spawner fire, we're going to need a fire spawner. So let's get that, and we'll do that half second because we always need a little delay after we activate. So that'll be our fire spawner. The next thing they want, and again, I'm just looking at the plan on the other screen instead of dragging it back and forth, it was a sound effect. So they wanted a sound effect to occur, and the sound effect was going to be on the vampire. Remember, the tag of the vampire was going to be vamp. And the sound effect that I picked out earlier for laughter was actually C_vamp, vamp female _ bat1. That's going to be the sound effect we're going to use. So she's going to have a little vampire sounding laugh, and then she's going to speak a one-liner. I asked specifically to the Persistent World Builder, did they want this message to be just a floaty text over the vampire's head, or do they actually want it like a cutscene where you zoom in on their face and you see the bars on the top and bottom? They said no. They just wanted to have a floaty text over the vampire's head. So that's a speak one-line message here. And the person that's going to do that is the vamp. And I'm just going to go over here and grab the actual words that they wanted me to use and throw it in here. And we'll have that happen, 1 second, well, 2 seconds after. And you know what? I made a mistake. The sound effect I want to happen after they spawn, so I'm going to put a delay on that of 2 seconds too. Okay, so sound effects, speak one-line message, and that's pretty much it. Now the fight begins. They've spawned. She said her little one-line. She's done her little laugh, and the fight starts. So I'm just going to finish that and look at what's next. So what's next is flag 2. And flag 2 is when the vampire is reduced to near death. So she's had some combat with the player, and we're going to move into all of these things where we're going to remove the hostility, turn her plot flag on, do some sound effects, change her AI to walk over to the throne, and then start spawning skeletons. So I'm going to basically just start putting all of those in to our SE manager. So let's do that. And these are all going to be flag 2s. So the first thing we want to do is, and I'll just refer to the plan as I go, remove hostility. So on flag 2, we want to stop the fight. We want her to stop being hostile to the player, and that's going to be vamp. Add. Next thing we want to do is turn her plot flag on. So we're going to set her plot flag to on, so that the players can't re-engage her again. Do that right away. Then, about a second after the fight stops, the player realizes, oh, what's going on here? The fight stopped. Give them a second to realize what's happening, and then we'll do her sound effect that they asked for. Sound effect for vamp. And the sound effect that I chose previously, again, for this, and the sound effect I believe was grunting. You wanted some kind of grunt, so I picked out a sound effect for that earlier, and that's going to be C_vamp female. Attack 2 was a pretty decent grunt type sound. And again, that's going to happen a second after the fight starts. And then a one-line message again. So speak one-line message for vamp. Again, that's going to be a second afterward. And the message that they wanted was this here. I have yet to regain my strength. Come serve your mistress once more. And I'm fairly certain that this sentence refers to her summoning the skeletons. Is really what she's commanding of this message is, hey, skeletons, come serve your mistress, is what she's saying here. So that's that piece. Going back to the plan again, change her AI. So we also want to change her AI so that she heads back to the throne. And stands there and watches the fight, because the request was she's going to sit back and watch. Again, when I'm changing her AI, I'm changing the AI that's on the spawn point, not her blueprint, because I stored the AI on the spawn point, and that's going to be go to throne. And then add. Oops, actually no, I wanted a delay on that one. So give me 1 second to do that. There we go. That's to change our AI to go to the throne. And then we move on to the next part. So she's headed off to the throne. Give her a couple of seconds and we're going to start spawning skeletons as per our plan. So the first skeleton number 1, is we're going to activate his waypoint, his spawn point, and he's going to be this guy here, skeleton number 1. And we're going to do that as per our plan 4 seconds after. Give her a couple seconds to get actually back to the throne before we start throwing skeletons at the player. So we activate that spawn point and then we fire it spawning. We need to fire it right away because we're only doing one at a time. 4.5 seconds. So we spawn the first skeleton and we spawn him right away. So 4.5 seconds in. Then we're going to do the rest. We're going to do the next skeleton. And I'm going to change this to 2. And based off our timing and our plan, 9. So that gives it 5 seconds before, after this one activated. 5 seconds later, the second one activates. And fire spawning. Where are you? Fire spawning. There you are. 9.5. Add. And basically what's going to happen now is I'm just going to repeat this right up until we get the 8 skeletons spawned, and then I'm going to deactivate them. So what I'm going to do, I'm coming up on the it's just over 20 minutes now. I'm coming up on that, and what I'm going to do is, rather than bore you with adding the same stuff over and over and over again, I'm just going to add them in off camera, and then I'll just show you afterward the rest of the skeletons, and we'll pick up in the next video.